screens labeled clock. They'll show how much time is remaining. For all senators, the 5-minute clock still applies for your questions. At 30 seconds remaining, you'll hear a bell ring to remind you the time is almost expired. It rings again when your time has expired. If there's a technology issue, we will move to the next senator until it's resolved. To simplify the speaking order process, Senator Toomey and I have agreed to go by seniority for this hearing. 1 year ago, we were weeks into this pandemic. Already, the United States had the most confirmed infections in the world. By April, 1 million Americans had gotten the virus. 10 million were out of work. By the end of the year, more than 350,000 had died. We represent just 4% of the world's population, but we were 20% of the world's deaths. A year later, things couldn't look more different. Under President Biden's leadership, we're once again the envy of the world, on track to lead the world in vaccinations. Think about that. After spending a year falling behind other countries with more cases, more deaths, now in a matter of months, things have reversed. We're leading the world again, reminding everyone we can achieve when we unleash American ingenuity and talent. We're showing people what we can do to make all our lives better when we invest in and follow and listen to and follow America's scientists and public health experts. Because of that leadership this summer, we'll again have hugs and barbecues and birthday celebrations. Help wanted signs are going to go up in windows again. Customers will feel safe going back in stores. Families will be back in local restaurants. And as Chair Powell's told us again and again, the best way to get the economy back on track is to get the virus under control. This isn't happening by accident. It's what leadership looks like. It's what a government that's on your side looks like. Last March, as we were staring down those staggering job losses, the Federal Reserve and Congress both sprang into action. We came together bipartisanly to pass the CARES Act. It was a lifeline for so many to help them pay their bills, to keep them in their homes, to keep businesses from going under. And as a side effect of helping everyone else, the bottom did not fall out of the financial system. The stock market, as we know, did more than just fine. That led the last administration and Republicans in Congress to think their job was done. After all, the stock market rebounded, corporate profits were soaring, but for so many Americans, the past year has been the hardest of their lives. More than 540,000 Americans have lost their lives from this virus. That's more than 500,000 families grieving grandparents, mothers, fathers, daughters, brothers. We've lost 9.5 million jobs since last February. Many of those job losses, as we know, have fallen on women. Too many mothers feel like they've lost their livelihoods, lost their support system, lost the ability to have a moment to themselves to breathe. We've missed far too many birthdays and weddings and graduations. Many Americans are about to celebrate their second Passover or their second Easter in a row without being able to attend services or celebrate in person. We've missed hugs with grandparents and family dinners, all the little moments with our loved ones that make our lives full and meaningful. As President Biden said, while it's been different for everyone, we all lost something. Today, help is here, finally. After a year of Americans being told by their government, we can't help you, we can't afford it, you're on your own. After a year of inaction and indifference, the American Rescue Plan will deliver on the hope that Americans voted for. Put shots in people's arms, money in people's pockets, kids back in school. It's the investment we need that will defeat the virus, rescue the economy, begin the work of building a better system for the future. Our witnesses today, Treasury Secretary Yellen, Federal Reserve Chair Powell, play a key role and have played a key role for years, but especially now in our economic recovery. This is Secretary Yellen's first hearing before our committee as head of the Treasury. That makes this the first time in American history a woman's come before this committee as the head of our nation's economic policy. It's about time. Welcome, Secretary Yellen. You and your colleagues at Treasury will have a huge role to play in making the American Rescue Plan a success, making sure that renters and homeowners can stay in their homes, getting funding to our communities to make sure they can help keep small businesses' doors open. I spoke to a Republican mayor in Western Ohio this week who said she's going to use a big part of the dollars that we have sent her to work with local businesses so they can continue to exist and then again grow. You're all charged with expanding their income and child tax credit to put money directly in the pockets of workers to help millions of working class and middle class parents keep up with the huge costs of raising a family. And you're responsible for getting direct stimulus checks to the vast majority of Americans. More than 100 million people already have their checks. And just a little more economic security and peace of mind. The Fed can also make sure it uses all of its tools to support a strong economic recovery that reaches all workers in all communities, not just Wall Street. It means we just can't go back to the way things were before the pandemic. For too many Americans, the economy didn't work for them. In fact, hasn't worked for a very long time for them. The gap between workers' wages and corporate profits has soared over the past few decades. Black and brown workers and women, in so many cases, have never had their hard work pay off like it should. And when government is set up to benefit the richest corporations instead of the people who make our economy weak, we get growing inequality, wealth concentrated at the very top, and a shrinking middle class. We're all too familiar with that. The past year, not to mention the past third of a century, makes it obvious. When we funnel money to Wall Street and the largest corporations and the richest tiny sliver of people, it never trickles down to the rest of us. We tried that approach repeatedly. It failed. The American Rescue Plan is the beginning of a new era when we invest directly in the people who make our country work. It means growing an economy where one job is enough to build a middle-class life. It means seizing every opportunity to lead the world in clean energy manufacturing and new clean infrastructure. It means giving people power over their own money and the financial security to weather an emergency. It means building an economy where hard work pays off for everyone. I look forward to hearing from Secretary Yellen and Chair Powell about how we will do that together. Senator, thank you, Chair Powell, and thank you, Madam Secretary. Chair Powell, do you think all this fiscal support will help us get to full employment and improve our overall economic and GDP growth?
I think that the fiscal support that Congress has provided since the beginning has been really at the heart of the recovery and deserves much of the credit for the strength of the recovery over the course of the last year. I'm loath to comment on particular fiscal bills, as you know, but I would just say generally this situation really called for a strong fiscal response, and we've certainly had that.
Thank you. Secretary Yellen, how does the American Rescue Plan help women and people of color and the workers who've so often been left behind in our economy?
Well, the rescue plan is very much focused on getting aid in a whole variety of ways to those groups, starting with unemployment insurance, rental assistance for people who are in danger of losing their homes, food assistance, assistance to small businesses, especially in low-income minority communities, just aid to state and local governments, much of which can be directed toward those groups that have been most adversely affected by the pandemic. So there's also child support, an increase in the child tax credit to help families with burdens, household burdens. There's an expansion of the child and dependent care credit that will help women who are at home, have it with family responsibilities, get back to work. So a broad range of features that are directed at those groups.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And I noticed one of the first things you mentioned is particularly of interest in this committee, and that is the work that a number of my colleagues did to help renters pay their bills and keep roofs over their heads and a roof over their head. I hope you'll continue to work with state, local, and tribal grantees to help this out, to get this help out to renters quickly. Secretary Yellen, do you think people are getting, thank you, do you think getting people vaccinated as fast as possible, as the Biden administration, as the American Rescue Plan are doing, does getting people vaccinated as fast as possible, does that help the economic recovery?
Oh, yes, absolutely. As Chair Powell indicated in his own remarks, ultimately the economic recovery depends on success in getting the pandemic under control, and vaccinations are critical to our ability to accomplish that.
And Chair Powell, as you had said earlier, you obviously agree with Secretary Yellen on that from what you'd said earlier. Do you think, Chair Powell, do you think direct payments to families help the economic recovery?
Again, I'm reluctant to, these matters are for Congress, not for elected representatives, not for us. Nobody has elected us to make those decisions. I would just rather say at a high level, I think fiscal policy has provided a lot of support and that's been appropriate.
Secretary Yellen, do you want to expand on that same question briefly? Direct payments helping the economic recovery?
Well, I think the direct payments are providing support to families for a wide range of burdens that many have suffered over the last years. There's other support that's clearly targeted, but I think this is helpful, in the spending that it will produce will speed the recovery.
One last question of both of you. Secretary Yellen, do you think that banks buying back their stock helps the economic recovery?
I have been opposed earlier when we were very concerned about the situation that banks would face about stock buybacks, but the financial institutions look healthier now, and I believe they should have some ability to, abiding by the rules to make returns to shareholders.
Okay, even though I said that was the last, my last joint question to both of you, to each of you. What are the lessons learned from the pandemic's impact on the economy that we should use to make the economy and financial system more resilient to the impacts of climate change? Do you want to start, Chair Powell, on that, and then close with Secretary Yellen?
So on climate change, I'll just quickly say that, we have a mandate to supervise financial institutions and one to look after financial stability. So we don't have a mandate to do anything in particular regarding climate change. We look at it as only to the extent it's within those particular existing mandates. And as you know, we are in the early stages of trying to understand what the implications are for both for financial stability and for on a microprudential basis for individual financial institutions. How should they think about those risks and ultimately manage them over a longer period of time?
Secretary Yellen?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's very important to make sure that financial institutions are resilient to the risks from climate change as well as other risks. And I think it's important for regulators to assess those risks, both to understand them and to help the institutions themselves understand and manage their risks.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.